You know the face. You've seen the cold expression of Wednesday Addams, the piercing gaze, the way she commands attention without saying a word. Jenna Ortega conquered Hollywood with her intensity, but behind that strength lies a story marked by insecurity, loneliness, and pressures that nearly crushed her essence. Because the truth is, not every star is born to shine without getting burned in the process. And Jenna's journey is proof of that. Before we dive into this story full of highs and lows, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any revelations and stay until the end. You're going to be surprised. Jenna Marie Ortega was born on September 27, 2002, in Coachella Valley, California. Daughter of Latino parents, she grew up in a large, noisy family where love existed, but money was tight. From an early age, she felt she was living two lives, one as the girl who helped at home, took care of her siblings, and lived far from the spotlight, and another as the girl who dreamed of appearing on screens. The problem was, in the real world, that dreams seemed impossible. None of her neighbors or friends believed a kid from a small town could break into Hollywood. And even at home, there was fear. Fear that she would get frustrated. But Jenna didn't know how to live without trying. At 8 years old, she began begging her mom to help her get auditions. Between trips back and forth to Los Angeles, long hours on the road, and dozens of no's that came without explanation, Jenna learned early to deal with rejection. The problem was, no matter how much she pretended to be used to it, each no left a mark. When she finally landed small roles in shows like Rob and CSI, New York, her family celebrated. But reality soon showed that Hollywood wasn't a kind place for young girls from humble backgrounds. She faced constant pressure to change her accent, to soften her Latino identity, and to seem more American. It was as if talent alone wasn't enough, as if she had to erase part of herself to be accepted. Her first big role came with the Disney series Stuck in the Middle. To the public, it looked like the start of a perfect career. But behind the scenes, Jenna was learning how cruel the child star industry could be. The exhausting schedule, the expectation to always be smiling, the lack of privacy, it all began to drain her energy. And there was another problem. While her friends were living normal teenage lives, she spent her days on set, surrounded by adults, hearing conversations, and facing pressures she wasn't ready for. Social isolation began to weigh on her. She had thousands of fans, but almost no true friends. When the series ended, Jenna found herself in a void. What seemed like stability turned into uncertainty. Casting calls dried up for months, and she had to grapple with the anxiety of not knowing if she'd work again. For a young actress, this meant more than just being out of a job. It was as if her identity had been ripped away. Then came the transition to more mature roles. Horror films like The Babysitter, Killer Queen, and Scream put her name back in the headlines. But with this new phase came the weight of exposure. The public began dissecting every word, every outfit, every gesture. And the internet, well, the internet doesn't forgive. Little by little, Jenna started facing online attacks. Some accused her of being too cold. Others, of being rebellious and difficult to work with behind the scenes. And no matter how much she tried not to care, those comments began to create a constant cloud over her head. But none of that would prepare her for what came next. Because when the success of Wednesday placed her at the center of global pop culture, Jenna would discover that fame and happiness don't always go hand in hand. And that the glare of the spotlight can blind even those who always dreamed of it. But if you think this was rock bottom, wait until you see what happened next. The price of being Wednesday. The whole world knew her name. Her image was plastered on magazines, social media, memes, cosplays. Jenna Ortega had become a pop culture icon practically overnight. But do you know what happens when your entire life changes in a week? You lose control. The success of Wednesday was overwhelming. Jenna's follower count exploded to tens of millions. And along with the praise came relentless criticism. Every interview, every response, Every facial expression was analyzed as if it were a puzzle. And suddenly, Jenna no longer belonged to herself, she belonged to the public. Behind the scenes, there was another burden, the filming schedule. The series demanded intense weeks in Romania, extreme cold, long rehearsals, endless takes. Jenna, a perfectionist to the core, pushed herself harder than any director could. She rewrote lines, questioned scenes, rehearsed movements to exhaustion. This put her at odds with some of the crew. Some saw her dedication as professionalism. Others, as insubordination. And those rumors started circulating, creating a narrative that she was difficult to work with. Can you imagine how it feels to see your name weaponized, when all you want is to do your best? While the public celebrated her badass attitude, Jenna lived a far less glamorous reality. Sleepless nights. Constant anxiety before every scene. And a suffocating feeling that, if she failed even once, the whole world would come crashing down on her. And then came the promotional schedule. International trips, talk shows, photo shoots, gala events. On the red carpet, she smiled. But inside, she felt like she was trapped in a character 24 hours a day. The problem was, when the lights went out, the silence was deafening. Fame also brought another reality, isolation. Before, Jenna already felt out of place in her teenage years. Now, the barrier was almost insurmountable. Those who approached her wanted something, a connection, an opportunity, a story to tell. Trust, already hard to come by, became nearly impossible. Old friends drifted away. Romantic relationships didn't last. And there was another shadow, the gratuitous hate online. Cruel comments about her appearance. Accusations that she wasn't grateful enough for her success. Rumors fabricated just for clicks. And even knowing they were lies, Jenna admitted in interviews that they deeply affected her mental health. The stress began to manifest in her body. Constant migraines. Extreme fatigue. And that strange sensation of living on autopilot. All this at 20 years old. She started speaking publicly about anxiety and the pressure of the industry, but even her statements sparked controversy. It was as if every word was twisted to fuel the media cycle. And perhaps the most painful blow was realizing that, for some, she would never be enough. If she showed vulnerability, they called her weak. If she showed strength, they called her arrogant. If she stayed silent, they called her ungrateful. And in the midst of this storm, Jenna began to wonder, who was she really? The actress everyone admired, or the lost girl behind the cameras? And then came the breaking point. While working on multiple projects at once, she realized she wasn't living anymore, she was just surviving. Hollywood had taken her privacy, her routine, her peace. And if she wanted to hold on to the little that remained of herself, she'd have to start saying no. But, as you already know, saying no in Hollywood comes at a price. Turning down roles, limiting interviews, stepping away from social media, all of it fueled more rumors that something was wrong. And at that moment, Jenna understood. In the game of fame, no matter what you do, you never win. But what would happen next would make her question if the career she always dreamed of was really worth it. When the dream becomes a prison. Have you ever stopped to think what it must feel like to realize the life you always wanted is exactly the life that's destroying you? That was the point Jenna Ortega reached. The months following the peak of Wednesday were like a whirlwind. Invitations for films, magazine covers, multi-million-dollar ad campaigns. Everything a young actress could dream of. But at the same time, every new project was another invisible chain binding her feet. She had everything, except time for herself. Less peace. Less silence. The pressure grew because everyone expected her to be perfect, always. If she looked tired in an interview, they said she was losing her spark. If she turned down a role, they speculated she was in a career decline. If she stepped away from social media, they created rumors of serious problems. In reality, she was just a young woman trying to breathe. And then came the crises. Jenna started experiencing panic attacks before going on stage or stepping onto a set. Her body reacted as if she were in danger, even when everything around her seemed safe. But how do you say that to an industry that sees vulnerability as weakness? How do you ask for help when everyone expects you to be the rock? Little by little, she began turning down commitments, trying to protect her sanity. But every refusal came with consequences. The phone rang less. Some directors pulled away. And for the first time, Jenna felt real fear of losing everything. Away from the cameras, she started reflecting on the meaning of fame. Was it worth exposing herself so much, just to please people who might never be satisfied? Was it worth giving up simple moments, a family dinner, a walk without being photographed, just to meet others' expectations? Jenna confessed in private conversations that she missed being just Jenna. Not the Wednesday girl. Not the Gen Z icon. Just the daughter, the friend, the ordinary person who could mess up without the whole world judging her. It was during this period that she nearly made the most radical decision of her life, stepping away from Hollywood completely. She wouldn't be the first or the last to do so. Some stars disappear without warning, simply because they can't take it anymore. And Jenna knew, if she continued at the same pace, sooner or later, she would break too. So she started setting boundaries. Fewer projects per year. More time with family. More silence, away from the cameras. But even so, the shadow of fame doesn't vanish so easily. You can turn off your phone, but you can't turn off your mind. And the voices, the criticism, the rumors, the expectations, kept echoing. The dark side of Jenna Ortega's story isn't about an explosive scandal or an irreversible mistake. It's about how the very machine that builds idols slowly consumes them. About how the pressure to be perfect can destroy who you are inside. And perhaps the saddest part is that, for the public, all this is invisible. We see only the moments of glory, the red carpets, the awards. But we don't see the sleepless nights. The tears in the dressing room. The silence of someone who feels alone, even surrounded by millions of fans. Today, Jenna continues acting, but with a different mindset. She knows she needs to protect herself. She knows her career is just a part of who she is, not everything. But the scar of that pressure, that will stay forever. And you? Do you still think living like a star is a dream, or do you realize that, sometimes, it's just a prison with walls made of light and applause? Now that you know the dark side of this star, click on the other video and discover the other side of the story, the good side. After all this, what do you really think about Jenna Ortega? Tell us in the comments below.